Welcome to Artsplanations, the podcast that is for non-artists, artists, and everyone in between.
We talk about art and try to explain what we think about it, and as artists, why we think that way. We ask questions to try and bridge the gap between viewer and creator to make the art world more accessible to everyone.
Hello, and welcome back to Artsplanations. I am Joanna Bolsons, and with me, as always,
is Andrew Malcheski.
It's been a long time.
It has been. It's been almost 5 months.
Yeah.
A little bit longer.
Can you tell us why?
The reason why is because Joanna and I have been separated by distance, not by our love.
Oh, wow.
For the past 5 months. I applied for and was accepted a artist in residency at Arkansas Tech University. It was kind of a unique residency because I was there for 5 months.
Yeah, you got to stay in a little dorm room that they had set up for you. You got to teach a class.
Make a sculpture and mentor an intern.
Yeah, very big things.
Yeah.
Very awesome things.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
So that's what we've been dealing with.
Yeah, and we figured since we're going to be starting to once again try to get back on a normal schedule with the podcast, we talk a little bit about what is an artist in residence.
Yeah, so it sounds a lot like a doctor's residency, which when I told my friends at work, their first thought was Grey's Anatomy. Like, oh yeah, I know what a residency is. I just didn't know your fiancé was a doctor. I was like, he isn't. So it's similar in the fact that you are at a place that you're not employed as far as like full time or with a contract or anything like that to teach for long term. It's more of just like you're there for a short period of time. Yeah,
it is a limited time engagement, and all of them are different. And there's artists in residencies all over the country, all over the world even. You can get residencies in Thailand, Japan, Germany. So it's something that, and each one is different. So if you ever apply for one or you're looking at them, you really have to go through and see exactly what's required, how long it is, where it is, and all that stuff.
Yeah, because for you got to teach a class, which is what you really wanted. You love teaching. So you needed your master's in order to be accepted and even just to apply. Not all of them are like that. Not all of them require you to teach.
Right, and that was something, one of the artists that I met while I was there, a guy named Seno, he was kind of interested in the process, and when I mentioned that I had to have my master's to be eligible for this one, he was like, oh, so all of them have to have a master's. I'm like, no, just this one. And most of the artist in residencies that I've seen don't require that. This one was very unique, at least as far as I can tell, because one, it did require that you teach a class at a university. A lot of them, they're at like places like Art Pace or museums or sculpture trails, or
and they're usually not that long either.
No,
they're like maybe a month or two.
Yeah,
5 months was a big discussion.
yeah. And so some of the other residencies I've seen are like at the Francosia Sculpture Park has an artist in residency program where an artist comes in and they work at their Francosia Sculpture Park. So they give tour guides, they do classes, like little workshop classes, one day kind of classes, and they make a work of art that's then installed at the park. Sculpture Trails does something similar, but not only do they have artist residencies, they also have internships, and they'll accept a cruise worth of people over the summers.
And it's not just sculptors either. They have painting artists in residencies where you might do a mural or you might just create a series of work that the gallery then will put on. I don't want people to think that it's only sculptors, it's only big works. Because it can be printmaking too.
Right. Maybe I should talk a little bit about what this one was so we have a frame of reference.
Okay.
So this was the Wingate Artist in Residency at Arkansas Tech University. It was 5 months. The artists had to teach a class in their subject. They had to create a work of art to be installed at a predetermined location. They needed to engage with the community, and they had to mentor an intern.
And you said predetermined location. They chose the spot. You did not get to have any say in that.
Well, they had a couple different locations that they had recommended. And then I had kind of designed, when I put forward the application, part of the application process is you submit a design for the work you're going to make. So this round, they were looking specifically for sculptors because they wanted sculpture. But the artist who had been the artist in residence before me was a printmaker, Jade Hoyer, who I believe is out of Colorado. And she did, for her piece, she did handmade paper that was then printed on and compiled into, I want to say like a 17-foot mural for their library. And the artist before her, whose name I can't remember, she did a large mural.
It was beautiful too.
Yeah.
I remember it, the fish.
Yeah, and her, like, it's hard for me to imagine how crazy her residency must have been, because she had her residency during COVID, like when it started. Like, she got there and then COVID happened, so all of her plans for community engagement
just out the window.
Yeah, she had completely pivot and change everything she was doing and come up with a brand new plan, because everything that she had been planning on doing, just nope.
Yeah, and how do you? So you got to mentor an intern who helped you throughout the process. How is she gonna be able to work with somebody under such harsh restrictions? Yeah,
because I know her plan, she had originally planned on going out and having panels that were going to be painted by the community members. And then they were going to assemble all those panels, and she would do whatever she needed to do. Really good, solid mural proposal. I've seen other muralists do the same kind of thing as a way to bring in the community and let them really take part in the process.
Yeah.
And instead, she ended up having a survey where the community could input what kind of things they wanted the mural to be about. As a way to engage them, which is really nice. But those are the kind of things that this particular artist in residency asks the artists to do, and they don't just ask for sculptors; they do ask for printmakers, for painters. Anybody can apply for it, as long as you can propose something that will meet within the prospectus.
Yeah.
And so you just read the prospectus and see what are they looking for. I've seen some residencies at national parks where they want you to live in a cabin for 2 weeks and make work out of the materials from the park.
Oh.
And so that kind of brings up the other
bit
things.
like Andrew Goldsworthy.
A little bit. Yeah, and same kind of thing, like where you're taking natural materials and either making a sculpture out of them or making paints or dyes, or it depends on what creative way you can come up with to utilize those materials. And some of them, they're like, you're going to be in a cabin 10 miles in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't
bring provisions.
Yeah, it has a solar panel for electricity. There's no internet. You only have what you bring to make stuff with. That you can trek out there in your car, or it's a mile hike to get back there, kind of thing. And I've seen that where it's like, oh, this is out in the middle of nowhere. And part of the allure of something like that is you have no distractions. You're there to make art, and the only thing you have to do is make art, which pretty enticing. Like, oh, I get to spend a week in the middle of the woods with nobody bothering me. Like, they can't bother me off the grid. Yeah.
I think my favorite part, though, is thinking of the students and how they can benefit from it. Because the best part of visiting artists or a resident artist, you get to see a different point of view. You get to hear somebody's, modus operandi that is different than what you are currently being taught.
Right.
So everybody works differently, everybody teaches differently, and everybody thinks differently. So the more opportunities you have to see how this person lays out their plan to accomplish their sculpture or their body of work versus how my professor is doing it, it's so helpful because not everybody's going to work the same, and you're trying to figure out what works for you.
Right, and that is one of the prime benefits, especially with this one where I was able to go into a class and I was teaching, is those students, they get a completely new perspective from someone, and it's not like where you go to an artist talk or, you know, a gallery opening where they're there for 3 hours and maybe they answer 3 or 4 questions from some faculty members.
Right.
They're there with you. They can ask you questions. They have the time to actually pick your brain and see, like, oh, this is how you think about things. This is how you approach problem solving. This is how you...
This is your work ethic. This is how you
yeah.
organize your day to make sure you get things done.
Right. And, I mean, the way that I do things is completely different from the way that Monami does stuff. Monami she was the visiting professor at Arkansas Tech University. She recently got a position in Ohio. I don't know the institution, but...
Is it Ohio or Idaho?
Oh.
I think you're right. I think it is Ohio. I think I kept saying Idaho because I couldn't keep it straight.
Now that you say Idaho, I'm second guessing. But she got a teaching position at another university, so she's going to be a associate professor there. But she's been at Arkansas Tech for 3 years, and she was the first artist resident there. And their sculpture professor had retired, and they asked her to stay on as a visiting professor as they opened the line and put out that call. And so the way that she sets things and structures things is completely different from the way that I do it. And part of it's the fact that she's a Japanese woman and I'm an American man, and we both come from, you know, we both study and practice sculpture, but our path to where we are now as artists are completely different. And so, you know, I used her lesson plan for her class to teach it, because I could have completely made my own and just taught it that way, but I felt like that would be doing the students a disservice, because then they have for this one class out of this one semester something completely different from what every other student has been taught, and then the next semester, if they go on to take advanced classes, they have a completely different base than all the other students. And so I used her lesson plan, but the way that she sets things up and does things, there are plenty of times where I'd be like, I would never have done that. Or like, it's interesting she does it that way. And there are a lot of things that I'm taking from that, and I'm like, next time I teach, I'm going to use these because they were really good.
But that's my point. I mean, just seeing how she teaches her class, it's open your eyes onto, oh, I can approach it this way, or that's actually a good idea. I'll implement it in this thing, and the students can do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and from the student perspective, you know, getting that is a boon, because you want that diversity in thought.
And that's, again, like, just the fact that artists can visit and not necessarily do a 5-month residency, but maybe they're there for a week to, like, showcase their work. Just having another body of work to study, it's so helpful. And you're not just staring at the same paintings at the same museum every month, because, you know, the rotation isn't as frequent as you would like.
Right.
Or you're only seeing the same professor's work. Not that anything's wrong with it, but you need to see more.
Right. And especially in a more rural university, you have a lot of students who are coming from rural parts of town. Some of them, they're the first kids in their town to leave their town to go off to college. You know, and they, you know, their perspective on art in the world is limited to kind of what they've been able to absorb through the internet. And
which is commendable that they're wanting to branch out. They're wanting to expand it. And so why not give them the most you can?
Right.
Give them the most points of view that you can give them.
Right, and that's the whole point.
Yeah. Which is, I guess that's a very roundabout way of saying I'm glad that these are implemented in schools, these residencies and these artist talks and visits and everything, because they are so important.
Yeah. And I mean, that brings up the other thing is I got to mentor an intern, which was probably the most rewarding part of the whole process. And something going into it, I was like, cool, I have an intern to help me build sculpture, and I guess I get to show him how I build sculpture. That'll be fine. But in actual practice, it was a lot more of like looking at the way that he thinks about making art and what he's doing currently in his professional practice and not doing it. And just being like, oh, hey, here's areas where, you know, why aren't you applying for juried shows? Why aren't you trying to make a website? Why aren't you more active in these areas?
Right.
And it's like, and so one of the things we did was we had an opportunity to put on a small exhibition at
hotel, right?
Yeah, in a hotel. And I was like, hey, there's a lot of room to cover, so I'll make some work, and you make some work. We'll make them around the same theme, but you're going to curate, you're going to write the show statement, you're going to make a website for it, and we'll work together, and I'll show you, like, ways to think about doing this, but you're going to do all the work. And seeing him kind of gain the confidence after doing that, like, I could now go out and find someplace else and make work and put on an exhibition.
Yeah.
And before that, he had told me he had been, he didn't feel like he was a real risk taker. He didn't want to, like, go out and, like, try something and have it fail. He was a little worried about that.
Well, he's also a family man, so, like, he doesn't want to branch out too far because he's got a family to support.
I guess I should say shout out to Jesse Braza, my intern.
Very sweet guy.
Yeah, great guy. He was a returning student, father, husband, has 3 kids who are graduating high school. And so his, he has a strong work ethic, and he's kind of coming into art as a career, the bachelor's program a little bit later than a lot of the other students. And so, his entry into it had been through model making, which is really cool. He had done a bunch of little dioramas and models.
Oh, cool.
And so he was a sculptor, taking sculpture classes, and that was his main line. And bring him in, like, oh, cool, all right, so let's talk about how do you utilize the things that you're talking about in your model making and what you're doing in your artwork to make work, and then make multiples, and how do you iterate. And so just also being in a studio with someone else and just being able to talk to them, like, we're working on the sculpture that I was building, and then we got to take breaks, so then we spend half an hour talking about sculpture making, or how we do things. And I would be there, so if you had questions, you could just ask questions, like, oh, hey, I thought of this thing. What do you think about this? Like, how do you do this? Or, like, what are your views on that? And you're like, oh, blah, 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 blah.
Right. And just like you are told in school, yeah, you should have a website, and that's it. It's not like, hey, I use this site, or you should think about it from this point of view. So you kind of being there, not to hold his hand or anything, but just be like, yeah, I use Weebly, or I use whatever. Right.
And I think one of the things with schools is most students get that in their, it's their professional practice, what they call the professional practice class. It's usually one class.
And that's if they offer it.
Right.
We didn't get offered that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think when I was at NIU we had something like that, but I know, well, I don't know, because our department head of sculpture had just moved to the department head, and the guy who was running the sculpture program got fired. Which he was tenured, and he got fired, so that should tell you about...
Well, we won't touch that.
Yeah, there's some issues.
But the point is, like, not all schools are going to offer it.
Right.
So you do need to seek it out. But if you don't know the questions to ask, you're never going to be able to find out.
Right. And I know Artsplanations Tech does have a professional practice where they go over this. It's like, hey, you should be making a website.
That's good.
You should, yeah, and it is really good. But it comes later in their academic career, more towards graduation, which is when you really want them to start thinking about that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was really nice to have that one person who I was focusing on and able to talk to and see, like, I directly saw his confidence and growth in the way that he thought about sculpture making in the 5 months I was there. Like, I saw improvement, like, noticeable improvement from when we had first started talking about what he was doing, the way he was thinking about things, to the last day when I left, when we were talking about what he was doing and thinking about things.
Oh, good.
And that was, yeah, that's why it was, like, surprising. Like, it surprised me how much I really enjoyed that part of the program.
So I was just about to ask, what was your favorite part of the whole experience? Would you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I like teaching, and that's one of the reasons why I like teaching, is seeing the students grow, seeing them kind of solve the art problem, or their minds work over that art problem, the aesthetic problem of making something, and then communicating through their own voice and all that stuff, and like developing those kind of concepts. But with the intern, it was one person, and I had such a much closer relationship with him because we were working
Like almost every day.
almost every day, yeah, in the studio. And I mean, I did a large fabricated steel sculpture, so when we're working, we're not talking. You can't hear each other. You're completely dressed out in safety gear. And a lot of times, he would show up, and I'd be there when he showed up, and we'd talk. We'd go over like what I wanted to do, if he had any questions, and then I would leave so he could work.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back when he was getting ready to leave, so I could kind of see what he did, see if he had any questions. We'd go over stuff, and then I would work because if he's there working, I don't want to weld with him in the same room because I don't want to give him a flash burn.
Yeah.
And I only had so many tools that we had to share.
It was kind of kismet, though, too, because, I mean, he's an older guy.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, y'all's body of work was very similar. When y'all did that show together, it flowed really well.
Yeah, when we had started putting it together, he was like, well, how do you... because I started working on a body of work before I even knew about that show, just because I'm a sculptor and I make work.
Yeah, and you had already had that idea that you were trying to push a little further whenever you got up there.
Yeah.
You had started it here in larger format, and then you were kind of...
Yeah, I've been working with constructed wood pieces in my sculpture, and so I brought a bunch of those with me, and I was kind of playing around with them, thinking about ideas, and one of the questions when we started thinking about it, he's like, well, how do you make multiples? Because I had like 10 little things that I started working on. I'm like, oh, well, I iterate. Like, I have an idea and I start with this, and then I look at the way it looks, and then I iterate and iterate. And we started talking about concepts, and I was like, these things I'm kind of thinking about memory and my past and childhood. He's like, oh, man, that's funny because I'm also working on some drawings and stuff where I'm thinking about the playgrounds that I grew up playing on. And I'm like, oh, man, that's really similar to the stuff that I'm working. I'm like, looks like we have a great way to kind of work. And as we kind of worked on it, the show was eventually called Swings and Ladders, and it worked out really well because my stuff has ladders and his stuff has swings, and so the iconography kind of worked together.
Yeah, it was perfect. Like, you could tell whose was whose just because your color palettes were slightly different, but they were close enough that it was really cohesive.
Yeah, he did primary colors, and mine were construction pinks and oranges with some blues and yellows.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, really cohesive, really great show. I was super proud of everything he did and how well it turned out. So, artists and residencies. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 5 months. I made a sculpture, which you're probably like, wow, you're not really talking about this thing you
didn't
did.
just do a sculpture. You made a 12-foot fabricated steel with bronze inclusions.
Yeah, it's a sculpture. It's done. One of the things I was asked when I was giving a talk about it to the students, and she's like, "Oh, how do you think? Like, how do you think about the work when it's done, or something?" I forget what her.
No. It was the newspaper guy. He asked, whenever the work is done, how do you like to think of it in 10 years' time, or something like that? He wanted to know what you hoped people would say in 10 years.
Oh.
Which you said, like, once it's done, you don't really think about it. Because it's true, it's no longer yours. Once it's installed, it's the public's.
Right, and that's the thing, like, once it's done, I'm done with it.
You can't pull a George Lucas and go over and edit something.
Right.
It's...
I'm not Richard Serra.
It's in its little anchor. It's been dedicated, so it's done.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Once it's up and done, I stop thinking about them, and the only time I think about them is when I need to use them to show somebody what I've done so that I can get the next one. At this point, it's now a means to an end.
I think you should still feel really proud. I mean, not many people get those.
Yeah, I am. I'm really proud. I've been able to make another public sculpture, which is great. I'm super happy about it. But I want the next one. I want to make another one. I don't really want to...
I just don't want you to feel like, oh, it's whatever. Like, you should be proud.
It kind of is whatever.
But it's not. Like, do you know how many people applied for that and didn't get it? Probably a bunch. I mean, we have to deal with rejection every day. You should be able to celebrate the wins.
Yes, and I do celebrate it. But I tend to not talk about or think about it unless asked about it. Because for me, it's...
Well, I'm asking.
That's my answer. artists in residencies, why are they good for, the non-artists? And the reason why is because most of them have some form of community engagement. And being able to go out in the community and engage with them is something, as an artist, I am very, very interested in. I absolutely enjoy doing. But for you, the community, it's a chance for you to actually, make some work of art or talk with an artist and actually, get their perspective on what they're doing, how they're doing it, why they're using the materials they're using.
It also just beautifies the area.
Yeah.
I mean, that campus is gorgeous on its own, so any addition to it just makes, chef's kiss.
Yeah.
So if you're able to engage in the community and then possibly beautify some area that's a little run down, that's great.
Yeah. And, my community engagement was done through talks about art to the local schools and then workshops with the local schools. So I got to do a workshop with high schools and talk to them.
Oh, yeah, you did the little kids.
Or
not little, they were like 4th graders?
Second and third graders. And then I went to their elementary school and I did a bunch of different workshops with the elementary school kids and talked to them. And that's just because my sculpture, the way it was designed, I can't have public coming in and helping.
Yeah.
That's fine. And honestly, there are other things I could have proposed, like a scratch block kind of sculpture thing. But with it so close on COVID's heels, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to be like, and then I'll have 100 of the community members all come together in this one small building and make this thing. Oh, that's right. That might not actually happen. So I had to do it that way. But like I said, Jade Hoyer, the arts resident before me, she did paper making with elementary school kids and high school kids, and she had the pulp, and then they pull the decals and pull each of the different pieces of paper that she used for a mural. And so there are really fun ways to engage the community, and that's always something that half of what an artist has to do is educate, because most people don't fully understand what actually goes into making a work of art. They see something and they think, oh yeah, it was made. They don't know what that means.
Or they just don't give it value at all. They're just like, well, why?
Yeah.
Which is so frustrating because it's, okay, you're going to ask me why. Well, I'm going to say, why not?
Right.
Like, why not make this beautiful? Why not be proud of how this park looks?
Right. Why not? Why not work towards making something and building up good things instead of just watching TV or
just letting it just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
And run itself down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also, it's community. It's getting the people from that area together to build community and be part of a community. All those great things that as adults can kind of go by the wayside as we focus on us and our things. It's really easy to just
But Russellville's kind of a small town. Like, it's a big city but small town feel. I say that in Arkansas terms.
Yeah, I just made a face because it's a small town with small town feel.
But for Arkansas, it's a bigger town.
Yeah, it's a bigger town.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of similar to here. We're friendly with our neighbors, but we don't really talk to them. But we do have a community here that if something was to go wrong, I know I could go next door.
Yeah.
So that engagement with your community, why not also have that engagement when it's something fun, like creating a piece of work?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's what I did for the 5 months. But this wasn't just a thing that I did. It's a conversation that Joanna and I had before I left, because it was 5 months of me 12 hours away.
Yeah.
And we visited. I came home once, and you came up.
I came up twice.
Twice, yeah. So we visited a little bit, but not nearly as much as I would have liked.
Yeah, you actually texted. We're not big talkers on the phone, but we texted a lot.
Yeah.
And called every day.
Yeah. So how did you deal with, one less person to help out?
I didn't cook. So So I ate a lot of canned dinners, or ate out a lot.
If you can't tell, I'm the one who cooks in this relationship.
Yep. I do not like to cook at all, so that sucked. But the house was spotless. I cleaned like the first... I cleaned probably the first 2 weekends you were gone, and I didn't have to... I just had to sleep after that. It was wonderful. I had the bed to myself. No, it sucked. Like, I tried to make the best of it, but it sucked. I didn't realize how much just having you here... I'm gonna have a little World's Tiniest Violin moment. Because we don't really talk that much, but we coexist really well.
Yeah.
Like, I might be in my studio drawing, and you're out here working on, like, a design on your computer. We're not talking, but I know you're there, and I can hear your little clickety-clack of the keys on your keyboard. So that sucked. I couldn't listen to my murder shows or watch my scary movies because you weren't here for me to know, like, oh yeah, he's got my back if something happens.
That's the one time you could watch them because I wasn't here to be like, ugh.
I watched them like the first couple of weeks, and then I started to get really bad nightmares because you weren't there. And so I was just like, okay, maybe like an episode a week. So I had to, instead of every day, I had to scale it down.
Okay.
But it was nice. I was able to work on my stuff and kind of spread it all out and not have to worry about your Thursday game night with your D&D guys. I was kind of able to take over the house a little bit with my own projects, but I still would have rather had you here. Or me up there with you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. They put me up in one of the like dorm suites, one of the nicer ones, but it was still a dorm. They had a stove and a sink and a dishwasher and washer and dryer.
Yeah.
But it was still a dorm. I didn't have my kitchen or all my utensils, all my spices. I didn't have like the first month I was there, I kept wanting to make rice. Not rice, but like shells and cheese, but I didn't have a pot to cook noodles in.
We had just gotten an air fryer for Christmas too, and so you couldn't use that.
We had just gotten a new bed like a couple months ago, in like November, and only got 2 months in that thing, and then I'm just gone.
It was amazing. Yeah, but it was totally worth it. Like, if we had to do it again, I think it would be worth it. I wouldn't want it to happen next month. Right. Maybe next year. Yeah. And even then, that's kind of, like, close. But I think you take the losses when... What's the phrase? Not the losses.
You take the good with the bad?
Yeah, you take the good with the bad. Like, it sucked. I hate talking on the phone. Yeah. But you take the good with the bad, and it sucked, but it was worth it. Yeah. Because you got to do what a lot of people want to do and would kill for, but haven't had the chance or haven't been picked. So.
Yeah, and that particular, like I said, that particular residency was very unique because of how it's set up, and I would do it again if I could. Yeah. Like I said, I'm already thinking, like, where can I get the next large sculpture to build? And I was thinking, like, I can't afford to just build a sculpture and then find someone to buy it from me, or I can't even afford to just build a sculpture and store it somewhere because I don't have space to store a large sculpture for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely not a 12-foot.
Right. And so, like, to work on that scale, I have to have a commission and, like, things lined up so that I know I can build it in this amount of time, and I have the funding to cover it in this amount of time, and it will be out of my life by this amount of time.
Yeah. Where are the patrons when we need them?
I mean, they're there. They just don't know about me yet.
Yeah. Or me.
So if you're out there and you're looking for artist pair to build you a large sculpture or artwork.
Yes.
Art information is on our website.
We also have a very noisy cat that you can
have. I will give it to you. Free cat. No. With every sculpture purchase. Well, free cat with first sculpture purchase. No.
Well, I guess that's our welcome back episode.
Yeah.
We're kind of rusty, but we'll get it.
Yeah, we wanted to also just use this first episode to kind of let you know what we had been doing, why we hadn't been podcasting for the past 5 months.
We tried, but it really sucked.
Yeah, it was not good trying to do it through Skype or Zoom.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we were just like, no.
I mean, it's not like the quality was bad or anything. We were in it. And we were like a month in it. So we were at that point where it's just like, no, I missed you. So I'm just going to complain this time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see it for how great it was.
Right.
Hindsight's 20/20, guys.
Yeah, and I forget what episode we had tried to do, but like the energy was also very much like,
sad me.
Yeah.
Pity
Wasn't
me.
good. Better that we just didn't do anything podcast-wise for that time. So. Well, yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for coming back and listening. I am Andrew Malcheski.
I am Joanna Bolsons.
And hopefully, you're still you.
And this is me.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. It means so much that you would take the time to listen to us. If you like what you hear and would like to help us out, please like, comment, and subscribe. We want to have a conversation, and sometimes that means that as we talk about things, we might make mistakes, like in the pronunciation of names or the misattribution of statements or a piece of work, and messing up titles and dates. If we do, and we notice, we'll put a correction in the show notes, and if we don't, please let us know so we can.
We invite you to join the conversation, so please get in contact. Email us your favorite artwork, ask us to explore specific artists, or ask how something is made. You can find us at www.artsplanations.com. There you can also find out more about us, the show, and each episode. You'll be able to find out every artist, quote, and most of the specific vocabulary we use in each episode, as well as a list of upcoming topics. If you are curious about our artwork, the best place to find us is on our Instagram and other social medias, which are linked through the Artsplanation website.
We would also like to thank the Joy Drops and Free Music Archive for our music.